So we have an interesting panel now, a topic that's very close to all of us, our hearts. Most of us are retailers here, but I just want a quick exercise. How many of you are in physical retail, offline retail? Can you put up your hands, please? Okay, that's quite a number of you. So many times we get asked this question, right? Valuations online में इतना है, हमको क्यों नहीं valuations मिल रहा है? Okay, that's a oft asked question in this kind of conferences. We also understand by now that there are two parallel universes existing. One, an online universe where the metrics and the valuations are very different, and other, an offline universe where the metrics and valuations that are tracked are very different, right? In this situation, what happens to somebody who wants to start up in retail? Should he follow an online path or should he take an offline path is something that we are going to talk about today, right? We have eminent panelists. They'll quickly introduce themselves as well and tell a little bit about their business and their product, and then we'll get to the questions. Myself, I am a retailer for the last 24 years. Right now, I am part of a chain which is 50 restaurants in Tamil Nadu called Junior Kuppanna, and I'm also involved in the startup space in a small way, investing into startups in retail tech as well. So, over to you.
Thanks, Bala. Inherently, the brand that we have created is called WickedGud. We make tasty food healthy, which otherwise is unheard of. I think in India, the culture we belong to, food is a very, very important part, and tasty food is even more important. So when we actually sat down, when we tried to kind of find the fact that what are the indulgent food which we can eat guilt-free, we realized that there were very few options. So we started WickedGud in May 2021. Okay, it's a mix and a concoction of wicked taste and good ingredients, which is basically indulgent food with a lot of nourishment value. We make healthy pastas and noodles. Yes.
Thanks. Yes. Over to you, Surender.
Hi, I'm Surender. I run a company called Tango. We use AI and computer vision to analyze customer journeys and shopping patterns in offline retail, essentially doing what Google Analytics does on online retail for the offline world. We are in over 3,000 stores, 30 plus brands today.
Thanks, Surender.
Hi, I'm Suhail. My name is Suhail. I have a men's clothing brand called Basics. We're largely offline. We have 130 retail stores and over 1,500 offline points of sale.
Good afternoon. I'm Ashok from Prakash Retail Udupi. We have 16 CDIT and home appliances stores, with an average store size of 20,000 square feet spread across 11 cities with around 650 associates working for the organization. Basically started in the year 1987 we have 5 brothers started this operation. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a good mix, as you see, of two retailers who have never raised money because they never wanted private money. We have a startup who's now raising money, and we have somebody in D2C space who's actually started up raising money. Before even he had a product, he had money in the bank, right? So that's what we want to discuss about. How's your journey been? Like you told me about your background, and you wanted to get into a product which is niche, and you told me that before even you had the product out or even talk about product market fit, you had money from investors, right? So what made you take investments so early, and what was your journey, and what's the learning that we all should take away from?
I think every story begins with some crisis, right? And so for us, we three of us, we kind of came from corporate backgrounds. All three of us, Bhumandani, Somalia, and I, we came from consulting, strat backgrounds, and we wanted to start something which was actually solving a bigger problem in the market, right? And like I said earlier also, right, food inherently in India or anywhere else, at least not the evolved markets, is consumed purely for taste, right? So we wanted to kind of build that narrative as to healthy food doesn't have to be lower on the taste quotient. Healthy food could also be tasty and indulgent. And that's the premise on which we started. Okay, obviously when the narrative is that wide and that broad, we never had the ambition of becoming a niche for a limited few brand. We wanted to go ahead and unjunk India and the world one kitchen at a time. That's the mission statement of the brand, right? Obviously, from day one, Titan Capital was very kind, and they were the first ones to kind of show interest in us, and we raised a pre-seed with them. They believed in us. I think when you go even before you have a narrative built, okay, it's the equity of the individuals and the people who are trying to bring about or build that. Once you build that, they invest on you, and then you prove the investments were right by building the right narrative for the market. Right? So that's been the journey. Learnings, I think the journey of a startup is a journey of completely like a chain reaction, right? So fail quick and fail fast. So that's something which we have learned. It's going to be 2 years in May, and it's been a hell lot of a learning. So that's something which anybody who wants to do a startup, okay, immediately should do it, because this is the best conducive time in the country and the culture with the mindset of the people to do something which is not the mass but for the class.
So how long it's been for you in business?
We're going to finish 2 years in May.
And you've been completely D2C, and there's some reason why you didn't want to do physical retail first?
See, at the end of the day, yes, we are 100% D2C. Okay, we always wanted to do offline, but offline was the volume game, right? We wanted to create that value first, okay, where we clearly established what our credentials were, what we stood for, what is the narrative all about, okay? And obviously, we're not a mass brand, right? Our products are kind of 3x more premium than the regular noodles and the regular pastas, right? So we are a mass premium brand. We wanted to kind of imbibe the market about it, okay? So to build, like, speaking very purely marketing, right? We wanted to build that aspiration before we went heartland or before we went mass. So that was the inherent thing, and the functional thing is offline is a lot of gas. We did not have that kind of gas pumping capabilities in the beginning of the journey.
And now the in thing now is sustainability, profitability. So how far are you away from that since you've been in our D2C? Is the road towards offline is also more a search towards profitability?
Yes, road towards offline, or probably offline as a road, is closer to profitability. Okay, but obviously the mix is going to be very, very heterogeneous, right? Gone are the days where you could say offline is going to be my 50% contributor or 80% contributor. Today, every month is a new dynamic. But obviously, nobody can disregard the value and the strength of offline, because that's where real brands get built. Okay, just before the panel, we were discussing as to how offline is a great awareness tool, right? So it's not only just sales, it's also the awareness that you need to build. And today, the funnel, if you talk about the funnel, it has just flipped over, right? People enter from advocacy phase, people enter straight into purchase, then the enunciation happens. Awareness is not necessarily the first thing that happens in the conventional journey, right? For now, it's all walked, right? So, yep.
Thanks, Monish. I'll come back to you. Suhail sir, the next question is for you. So it sometimes puzzles all of us. We had today the largest audience for Piyush Bansal. Lenskart, everyone knows, raised money, then came into offline, and significant money is because they got online valuations. All the retailers online seem to be following that, whether it's Carrot Lane or Lenskart or otherwise, right? We had a panelist who had to come from Snitch, who's in your category, apparels, right? So Snitches again raised money, done some crazy valuations, which probably an offline retailer like you are also aspiring to get. Where do you see yourself as an offline retailer in this game? Are you thinking that, hey, this is a bus I could have taken, but I didn't choose to take? And if that is the case, then what should we all be as offline retailers be doing for that?
So I'm going to give you my perspective completely from the way I see the world. First of all, see, we're all building businesses for our consumers. And whether you're a Snitch or whether you're Basics or whether you're, WickedGud, we're building businesses for our consumers, and my consumer is happy with my business. So first of all, we build the business for my consumer, right? Second is that we don't know what the end game is. I don't know what the end game is, right? And the world I've come from, we had to balance a consumer, we had to balance a P&L and a balance sheet. we had to balance employee, we had to balance everything at the same time. A lot of these businesses today that are being built are doing one thing at a time. They're first acquiring consumers, or they're first acquiring tech, and then they're acquiring consumers, then they're looking for volume, then they're looking for profitability. We've not had that luxury. And I don't know whether, for me, the jury is still out. Whether 10 years from now, these will be tomorrow's mass brands, honestly, right? Whether they can be tomorrow's mass brands, because that's
but Lenskart is a reality today. Flipkart is a reality today.
Yeah, but then the jury is not out, is what I believe.
But still, so many consumers are buying
I know.
Lenskart.
Just because the consumer is buying it.
So jury is out.
No, I don't think so. No, for the founder, see, I'm building a balance sheet business. I'm building it for us as a business. And I don't know whether I'll still run that business 20 years from now, 15 years from now. So the way we've built the businesses, we've created value for the founding family. We've created value for us. Like I said, everybody is meeting a consumer. Everybody is building businesses for consumers. But I don't know whether the model will sustain itself in the coming years. And when I say model, I mean completely funded, loss-making for several years. I'm not talking about online or offline. I don't think those are options anymore. I think all of us have to be online, offline, because you have to be where the consumer is. But I don't know how long a business that is not making profit can sustain itself. That's where I come from, right? And that's just my instinct and the way I've run my business for 35 years.
So are you saying that the only reason it's not because of capability, why you are staying away from online is CAC, customer acquisition
I'm not
cost?
saying, yeah, because I have other ways to find a consumer. Today we've built an offline penetration, and if somebody wants to build what we've built over 30 years, we want to build it in 3 or 5 years, you have to make some sacrifices, right? So if you want to acquire millions of consumers in 4 years, 5 years, what other brands have taken 30 years to build, there obviously is a price you have to pay. And when you're paying that heavier price, it's a risk. That's what I believe, right? Luckily for me, I don't have those risks staring me in the face. A lot of young entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, have to take those risks. So, yeah.
But where's your online journey at Basics?
We have an online journey. We tick all the boxes. We work with all the online players. But we're clearly focused on ensuring that all channels are profitable, right? All channels are profitable, because I don't have a need to build a business to reach a consumer at any cost, at all costs. I don't have a need. And that's just where I come from.
Thanks. Fair point. I'll move on to Surender now. Surender heads a retail tech startup, and he's been part of, last 6 months has gone through the journey of fundraise. Surender, for an entrepreneur, whether be it a tech entrepreneur or a retail entrepreneur, the process of the whole funding, right, when you raise money from angels or seed or VCs, is an alien process. If you can take us through, since you're fresh from that experience of getting a term sheet, if you can take us through your experience and share with us something.
Sure, Bala. So I think we just heard a couple of two extremes, right? Someone who got funded even before the business was incorporated, or someone who's never looked at external funding. I'd say we were kind of in the middle. So this is our actually our third round that we're doing. But as a deep tech startup, it was there was a heavy investment early on, where we spent about 2 years to build out the tech, build out the underlying fundamentals that were required, identify market fit, and we went through that exercise bootstrapped, right? So that's an exercise that very few investors will actually put their money on and let you do that on their dime, right? So we did that exercise on our dime. We went through that. We built the MVP, the first set of customers, had the product validation. And once we were there, and that's typically when a lot of startups will start looking at external funding, and that's kind of what we did. We were out in the market when we had, I think, 2 to 3 customers and about 20 odd stores that were installed, and we knew the product was working. We could scale it. We had visibility into scaling it to at least 1,000 stores. That was our first approach, and I think we were very early on, got connected to a few investors and went through that process. Their selection process is also just as important. There's a typical assumption that the the person giving the money is the boss, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. And actually, credit to Piyush, because LensCut is an investor in us, and he was always, sort of very keen on emphasizing that the investor is not just an investor, but a partner, right? And I think you find a right partner to journey along with you, and then the next rounds become that much easier, and then it becomes about scale and hitting those KPIs.
What is the one thing that you got right when you went out to raise funding? What was the critical message that you?
I think hitting the benchmarks, right? So a lot of the process of when you raise funds doesn't actually happen when you raise funds. It's almost like preparing for an exam, right? You can't prepare the night before, or you can't mug up the day before. You have to hit a certain metrics over years, and all of the hard work that goes into it end up paying for it at some point, right? Because we all read an article that says, some company, LensCut, for example, or Carrot Lane, for example, raised X amount of capital, but we're clueless as to what went into it for years in bringing that to that particular stage, right? So there's a lot of background work. That exam prep is quite tedious. That can have anything to do with ARR, MRR, number of customers, number of users, amount of data, market size. So I think checking all of those boxes well before you go to a discussion table for funding, that's how you should look at funding.
Great. So in case anyone's looking to raise funding, the preparation is more important than going out for funding. So now talking about funding is the next interesting person. I'll bring Ashok ji in. Ashok sir, you just told me that you never want to raise funding, right? Because he's at a size where he can fund other retail startups. Your thoughts on, you've led this business across 2 decades, you've used bank funding, self-funding, and currently your company itself is generating enough cash to fund your future growth. So in this, where do you see private capital, and should any entrepreneur in your situation even bother at looking at that option, or should just pass? What's your thought, sir?
Yeah, it is the entrepreneur's thought actually. It is the outpost of the organization or the entrepreneur. So you can go both the ways. If you have a good idea which can grow faster and for which fund is the problem, go that way. We are all, I can say, more conservatives. We want to have a business in our way. See, the issue is here, for me, I am seeing only the customer. If I go the funding route, I need to see 2 personas. One is the customer and the investor. So my job becomes tougher. We might have gone the easier way. We thought we will do a business. Say business is as Mr. Simon Sinek says, it is an infinite game. Always you keep playing, whether winning or losing. Sometimes you win, sometimes others win. So it's a game, continuous game. So we believe in the keep your journey on. We feel for our speed of growth, the internal accrual or profit flowing back with some bank support is sufficient for our speed. If I want to go faster, I might need more funds. Then I need to build some other capabilities to manage the funding or investors. Today I don't have that capability. I feel for me this is sufficient. I'm going that way. So we are comfortable. We feel both the ways are right. We will not say this way or that way. Both the ways are right. It is the person or the entrepreneurs to decide which way he need to go. That is my take.
Thank you, Ashok sir. Words of wisdom. There are 2 parallel universes, but there's somebody trying to connect also these 2 parallel universes. So, Suhail sir, I'll bring you in. There's a lot of thought here. One of the disruption happening in retail industry is now access to capital. And we know the kind of acquisitions and private equity action happening in the last decade in retail itself, right? You have said no to a lot of term sheets in the last decade journey with basics. What's your thought on when a self-grown entrepreneur or an organization or a brand should look at private equity, and looking at larger players, corporates and MNCs coming into your space in apparel, pertaining to your objective category, where do you see yourself till which point of time you feel you would like to run the race, and at some point of time, would you need a partner?
See, I think the economy is opening up now. Business is becoming bigger. There's capacity to grow business in India now. So I think the times have changed. So I'm not saying that we'll say no to capital, But there's going to have to be a mindset change the moment we take capital in, because we'll have to, one, be ready to separate ownership from management, right? And then it won't be your own business. So if that mindset doesn't exist, then I think it's not responsible for us to take capital. So I think we're probably in that mindset now, where we're willing to bring in people and share ownership. See, I think the moment you bring in money, money has a responsibility by itself, right? Whether it's your money, whether it's somebody else's money, money needs to make money. So for us as entrepreneurs, when I say us, I mean my brother and me, today we're probably at the phase where we finally realize that now is the time for us to bring in capital, share ownership, share the burden, share responsibility, and grow the business. Maybe 10 years back we were not ready, and I'm glad that when we were not ready, we didn't take the money, because then there's bound to be conflict, right? So when you're ready, you take the money and then you do the dance, but you have to be ready for it in your mind, as entrepreneurs. You can't take somebody else's money, treat it as your own, and not treat him as an owner. I think that's a no-no. So I think we're ready now, right? And as and when there's a demand, and as and when we feel that we can take the money, we will. And we will grow the business, we'll share ownership and share responsibility.
So something to you, both of you, large established retailers, 500 crores plus, and I'm sure there are many of you here as well. Why haven't you guys invested in retail startups?
We have not started till now, but I think that is better to start. We need to work on that. We are open for that. At least.
So all the retail startups here, you know whom
time
to chase.
We need to start that actually. We should work on that. We'll work on that.
Suhail sir.
I'm already invested, Bala. I've already invested. I'm very excited with young entrepreneurs who are willing to upend the world. It's probably it's time for people like us who have the money to back younger people like him, right? And say, go the distance, because it's a brand new language, right? And if you don't understand it, then the best way to do it is to bet on a house, right? So I'm already on that journey, and I'm well into the journey. I'm very excited.
So one is getting the check ready, other already has the check, so you can catch up with them after the...
So the check will be mine, the signature will be his.
Yeah, so coming from the side of legacy to people who are trying to build the legacy, right? I mean, see, they have their own constraints as they've built larger businesses, and trying to course correct is sometimes legacy also can be a problem. You are here starting your own legacy, and you're redefining rules of retail, whether it's customer acquisition, whether it's the metrics that you're tracking. Can you take us through your journey on the metrics that you're tracking and what actually is mattering to the investor? Does the investor even ask you how much loss you're making or how much cash you're burning, or it's just the customer acquisition and all that? Run us through that, please.
Sure. I think there's a very important point that was made, right? Money, whenever money changes hands, it also changes owners, right? So there is never going to be a time when anybody on this planet is going to say, this is the money that I have and it's not my own, right? So when there is money in the bank or in your account and you are liable to do a certain thing with that money, the neck on the line is yours, right? So nothing has really changed, right? We are still, what we are trying to build is only for the consumer. The consumer out there is the actual king, right? So we might have a different approach in how we are building that relationship with that person out there, right? Some things work better. Nobody is early, nobody is late, right? It's a different way of approaching it. How they have built the brand over years, okay, is commendable. When we look back at that, we're like, wow, that's tremendously difficult. And probably vice versa, when they see how are we tracking the CAC versus LTV and all those jargons, right? At the end of the day, I think it's just a simple linear process. Are you making something where there is a need gap? Okay. Is your product or service a good fulfillment to that need gap, right? That's the core question. As long as you have that clarity of thought, I think what matters the most is focus. Okay. Yes, investors will always ask you not about the top line, but they will ask you about cash burn, right? That's the world, right? Because top line is just probably 20% of the game. 80% is the process, how you're doing it, what you're doing it, when you're doing it, what's the kind of metric that you're tracking. Today, behaviors are changing, right? Fathers are evaluating baby products, okay, and mothers are evaluating tech products. So as a culture, I think there's a dynamic shift, right? And there is no way where we won't need offline behavior understanding. You can't sit in front of a laptop, you can't sit in front of an AI device and run the world. You actually have to hit the market, whether you do online business or offline business. You have to understand the audience, right? And there is no other way to understand the audience other than talking to them, communicating with them, right? So that's the overall game. Yes, when we begin, I think gone are the days where you began saying that, okay, I'm going to build a legacy brand. I think the word today is not legacy. The word today is relevant, right? Are you building a relevant brand? Right? Because at the end of the day, I think most of the D2C brands are trying to solve a specific problem which has been unaddressed for a long period of time. Right? So the simple philosophy is provoke and convince. And majority of the money and the funds are getting spent in provoking them, saying that this is what you're missing or this is something which you're not mindful of. And then convincing happens with your product and the service that you're offering.
Thanks, Monish. Suren, I'll bring you in. This time, my question to you is not more as a startup entrepreneur, but as somebody who's providing a tech solution to retailers, right? Your basket of customers that you're working with are both legacy brands and these so-called new age brands which are trying to come into retail. What is the DNA difference that you see?
Yeah, Bala, that's actually a great question because we've seen this and I've seen this trend and I've tried to think about this internally as well, right? So we work with a basket of brands, so legacy and new age brands. Coincidentally, one of our first customers was a legacy brand. In fact, he's here today, and it's been that way. It's been a mix, right? So it's been legacy brands as well as new age brands. I think there are whether it's a next generation in legacy brands looking at tech or new age brands looking at tech first approaches. I think it's just about finding that right DNA mix, and when they have that right DNA mix, they're able to look at all the options, evaluate all the options. But I do think it's a myth that legacy brands are not looking at tech and various technology products, right? So that's definitely changing, and it's just about finding the right approach.
But in terms of the promoters and the entrepreneurs driving these both sides, right? What is something that you see as a DNA difference which you feel the new age guys are able to scale up so better apart from just the funding, right? Maybe the decision making is faster or
I think
the teams are configured differently.
Yeah, I think the funding is the only significant piece, right? Because like Suhail said also, when you have funding, you have a lot more pressure, and things need to happen faster. Decisions need to be made faster. Whether faster is better, we don't know, but things move faster, at least from a adoption perspective, whether it's new technology or even opening a new store. So I think fuel helps fuel things faster, but still I think the thought process stays the same. It's about a thought-out approach, maybe something that takes a little bit more time in a traditional business versus a funded new age has a lot more fuel to take quicker, faster decisions. That's the only difference. But I think end of the day, there's willingness to pay, willingness to adopt across the board, whether it's new age or existing brands.
So I think we've had a fair round of questions, and the takeaway here for you guys who are looking at starting up in the retail space is also that prepare for a new rule of world order, and prepare if you are raising funding. So that's also a process. Then post funding, the dynamics are very different. How you manage not just consumers, but also how you manage investors is an art. So that's something that you can learn from people who have raised money here. And obviously there is, it all boils down to the consumer, right? Why are we doing this? Whom are we doing this for? So probably this session would have given you some insights or thought into how you need to build your business and how you need to scale up if you are a retail startup. We'll now open for questions, and I am very tempted now at this point of time to request another retail giant here sitting, Mr. Biju Korean sir. Biju sir, I have a question for you, if you don't mind, for the benefit of the audience. I always like to call upon Mr. Biju sir for this kind of sessions because he's straddled two universes, both of an entrepreneur in retail and also entrepreneur professional in retail, and also is now an investor formerly with El Catterton and now with Premji Invest. So your thoughts on retailers or young entrepreneurs wanting to venture out into retail and how the new world is now, and if they are looking at investments, especially shark investments to kind of grow, what would be your advice, sir? Over to you. Sir, please. Sir, you can.
But I think the most important thing, as everybody said, was about being able to create a partnership in retail and funding. And that's where I see it. Unless the retailer or the prospective startup is addressing a genuine problem that the customer is experiencing and is able to do that smarter than anybody else, there is no hope for that startup. Because if you're doing what somebody else is doing and you're hoping that because you're spending more money to do that, that you will be successful, chances are that there will be somebody else who will come in and they will spend even more money than what you've done. And it will then end up being like the battle between the two pure play e-commerce giants, Flipkart, Walmart and Amazon. And in reality, at the end of the day, both are losing money, but both have enough capital available with them to be able to lose money. And courtesy both of them, there's no other pure play retailer who actually has been able to survive. Everybody else has actually collapsed along the wayside. So that's one thing. So unless you do something which is very unique, very different, chances of you being able to succeed are tough. If you are trying to do it as the second person in the industry, remember also that you've got to get somebody else to be able to help you to do that. Because if you're the first person, then most people will say, hey, this is unique, different, why don't I do it? But if you're the second person, then make sure that you've got with you either VCs, PEs, or whatever capital you can get. Get that capital which will stay with you, because you should expect a bruising battle ahead, where you will, do something, your competitor will do something, you lose some money, and in that whole process, somebody should be able to hang around with you while you keep losing and establishing market. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that at the end of the day, when you see all of it, there are three key players who are there. One is the consumer. So unless you are able to solve a problem, consumer won't come to you. That's one. Second is you yourself, because you're looking for capital to be able to invest, to get capital invested in your business, which will help you to grow and hopefully become richer. And that's the other part which you're looking at. So what's your valuation? How do you actually build a business which can go from one valuation round to another valuation round? And it might be 10 years before you can exit. It might be you'd never want to exit. So whether you want to build a business for perpetuity, whether you're building a business for valuation, all that is the second, but that's you as the entrepreneur. The third is the person who's funding. And when the person is funding, they're not going to be sitting around saying that I will be with you during a lifetime. They will all say, I'll come in at point A, I'll leave at point B. They define what the duration of point A to point B will be. Each one of them has got a different horizon in terms of how much time they will be able to spend. But at the end of the day, when they exit at point B, they're hoping that they're getting a reasonable return on whatever money they have put in. So you have to also keep them, happy. And the challenge always, it's much easier said, but the challenge always is to optimize between these three seemingly congruent requirements but on the other hand, sometimes be at odds with each other. So somebody wants you to grow quite fast. Because you're having to grow quite fast, you're doing silly things sometimes. Because you're doing silly things, you're burning more cash. Because you're burning more cash, you're diluting more equity. Because you're diluting more equity, you have to get new people to fund you. And sometimes you discover that your cap table is so big and you're a 5% shareholder in that company. And then you say, who am I working for? Am I working for the rest of these investors, or am I working for myself? So, you have to be careful in the way you pace out at which stage do you want to take money in, and which is why, some of these people have decided that they don't want to take money, which is a very sensible decision. Because if you are running a business making money, then what's the big deal in actually borrowing money from somebody else to be able to say that I'm valued at so much? You don't require money. So, so even the stage at which you want to be able to take money, how much money do you want to actually take? Because all these come back to bite you later. So if you say that, I've actually I've got invested in me 200 crores to achieve a revenue of 300 crores and to be able to get a cumulative loss of 120 crores, that's one calculation. And if you say that for the same revenue, I actually took less money, which is you were more capital efficient and you lost a lot less, it actually helps you, because at each stage you are parting with equity, and that parting with equity is a very expensive, gift which you will give to your investors if you do it very early and if you do a large parting of equity. So, you have to think about all of these aspects when you actually decide starting, what problem am I solving? Am I different? Have I got enough moats built around my differentiation? When do I actually go to the market to, get money? How do I grow? What is the kind of finance that I will use to grow? And then thirdly, if I get somebody on, it's like the riding on the back of a tiger. You've got to figure out when do you have to get that person off your table. And that depends on what exactly you do and what that person's aspiration is. So alignment in terms of aspirations, complicated, but it's a journey worth taking. Some have done it very well. Many have, lost their shirts in the process of doing that. So you got to be figuring out how to be able to do it exactly. There's no right formula, but what is best for you is what you have to do.
Thank you so much, sir. A huge round of applause for Mr. Biju Kurian. Sir, I think you gave a mini master class on whether to raise funding or not in retail space. Now we'll open it up to the audience. Any questions? You can put up your hands. Yes, can we have a mic over to this lady, please?
Hi.
No problem.
So yeah, it's very interesting to hear about funding and not funding. And
Can you introduce yourself?
yeah. Hi, I'm Prerna, and I'm an architect by profession, and I run this design company wherein we undertake retail clients, as in we design their stores and also execution. And also, I wear a second hat, wherein my husband runs this business by the name of Mohanlal Sons, and we have outlets like for menswear. So I was, of course, like both the businesses doing fine, and we have enough takeaway money home, thinking of it that way. But also there's some sort of FOMO that comes in, I believe, when you hear 100,000 stores and 2,000 stores and, the kind of turnovers. And I don't know, like, it's very, very confusing. So what should we do? Should we actually, I mean, there's so many giants sitting here and sailing in the boat. So how is it like, one should absorb funds if it's a profitable company and you're earning enough, and obviously you're not answerable to anyone. But then there's obviously this want where you want to do more.
Suhail, sir, you want to take that question?
How can you ask me to speak after Biju spoke, Bala? A tough act to follow, no? It's like, So, see, for me, it's very simple. Money has to make money. Whether it's your money or somebody else's money, right? It's a responsibility. So the moment you take somebody's money, the meter's ticking. I'm an entrepreneur, I have access to bank funds. I can get money at 10%. You go to an investor, he wants a 25% IRR, 28% IRR. So I'd rather give my money to somebody else and ask him to make 25% to me than take somebody's money. Let somebody else carry that weight. It's a very tough ask, and you have to be completely unique, your idea has to be great. You know, you have to solve a real problem. You can't be the fourth player or the eighth player in an industry like Biju said. There's not a chance in the world you're going to make it, you know. And like he said, you'll just keep, it's a battle of bruises and finally you'll die, right? And I don't know why you want to do it. Because you're not going to be, I don't think you're going to be successful. The chances of being successful when you're 8th in line or 10th in line is probably 1%, and it's called a miracle. Then, you know, you go sit in the mosque and pray, or you sit in the temple and pray saying, God, make some money for me. I don't think it's possible. So, you know, for you and me in business, it's the same conundrum that they have as well, young entrepreneurs. They probably don't have the luxury of time. So I think we grew up in a great time, you know, when we could build the business slowly, you know, there's not a lot of competition. I don't know whether I'll start a new business today in 8th in position or 10th. I don't know whether I'll start a new product brand or a new, I don't know whether there are any new segments left, right? And if they are, then they're extremely difficult to find. And once you find it, then you'll probably make it, but it's very difficult, you know. So why would you take somebody else's money? I think, you know, it's a very, very dangerous thing to do.
We have a lot of family-run businesses and promoter-driven businesses here. See, there is... Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So we have a lot of family-driven businesses here. If you can put up your hands who are all promoter-driven, represent promoter-driven family-run businesses. Yeah, it's at least 20% of them. There are also instances of large family-run, promoter-run businesses where the next generation has gone on to do something new. A favorite example of mine, one of the largest jewelry retailers in South is Jaipur Gems. His son went on to start a small online store, which is now called Carrot Lane, right? So you don't have to miss out on both the worlds. You can obviously straddle it also, is something that we have learned from Mithun.